which have got largely by virtue of Mother Nature, and leading environmental performer, and certainly the adjective there, leading, sets a very high bar. It's not just a strong, it's leading. We're leading the way. So I guess what I'm curious to know, and I know the targets have been largely, they have been confined to air quality and water quality. Where other, and this is just a question as to process really, where there's other environmental matters, maybe quite important, significant ones, that are totally contrary to that notion of leading, I take it that they just get ignored then, do they? So we concentrate on air quality and water quality, but say, for instance, if we're spraying all chemicals in our parks, for instance, as an example, that then just doesn't figure in any of the outcomes sought, does it?
So, Madam Chair, these measures were put together on these measures were put together under advice from our colleagues on sustainability. The ones under number 8 regarding the boundaries, they relate very much to within the city centre as described. So where we're looking at, for example, the number of minimum 5-star rated buildings, that's very much within those confines. The air quality, that is measured on Queen Street, that we already have a facility to measure that there. We have data going back a number of years, so it just makes sense to include that. But that said, as I pointed out at the beginning, these measures aren't exhaustive. Within and alongside each of these, there is a whole world of other measures that are of value. These are the ones that, under advice from the respective experts and whatever part it is, were felt to be the most straightforward in some cases, or the best, some combination of those to actually include within this and to give that overall picture of health.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'll just make the point then, Madam Chair, that if we're going to use language like, exceptional and leading, then I would imagine that, or I would assume, and I think that would be the expectation of anyone reading this document, that the performance then went beyond just the outcomes or specific outcomes. That goes to any other matters that would be regarded as important to the environment as well. So that's just an observation I make in terms of how the layperson might read this document.
Okay. The other thing perhaps to say to Councillor Watson is I think there's a big organisation, lots of operations staff, lots of CCOs all doing work which all contributes to other environmental outcomes. This was not a global environmental outcome for City Centre. It was the most appropriate, the most, I suppose, achievable, measurable and controllable. And going back to my Councillor Lee's views about accountability, we don't have accountability for everything. No. So there's a bigger organisation that's doing some great work in that space. But as you say, more work can be done.
And it doesn't in any way mean we're not going to continue to monitor all the other things that we monitor through REMU and other spots. So it's really just trying to pick the right headlines.
That's absolutely right. I mean, if you wanted to find out detail about environmental performance of Auckland, I wouldn't suggest you look at this paper. I would suggest we do produce other material that does that. And similarly, if you want to find out exactly what's going on in transport, you wouldn't just look at this paper. If you want to find out, however, what's going on in the city centre as a whole and how do all these things fit together and get a real sense of the health of the city centre, then this is exactly what the purpose of this document is.
And I guess the people in the outer suburbs, which make up the majority of Auckland, would also assume, what's good for the city centre. One would be hoping that would be good for where they live too.
Okay, I think the point's clear, and I think Councillor Watson's quite right. Somewhere in here we just need to say this is not an exhaustive list. For instance, the Wairara Local Board, I'm sure, will have some very clear guidelines on spraying, no spray zones and environmental outcomes. Councillor Quacks.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. I note that the issue on community safety is going to be sent to the Community Development and Safety Committee, but I just want to ask you some questions, how we arrived at this figure of decreased crime rates in the city centre by just, and that's my word, 5% every 10 years, given that between December 2014 in December 2014, in that year leading up to that, there was a 20% drop in crime. So why would you then have this very, very underwhelming target of just a 5% drop per decade over the leading up to 2020? And has that been discussed with the police?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, that has been discussed with the police. The target was derived from the Auckland plan, and what it suggests is that the city centre ought to achieve the same level of crime reduction per capita as is achieved as is aimed for in the rest of Auckland, and that actually to achieve that same level is perhaps more ambitious in the city centre, given that you have many people coming into the city centre who are not living here, and that growth is greater. So that all makes sense. However, the council is absolutely right. When you then look at the figures, it's extraordinary, that rate of decrease, and it doesn't look particularly ambitious. The reason why we've left that is because in our discussions with the police, they are reviewing their own targets. They're in the process of doing that, and we have said that we will simply wait for that review and look to make this change once that review is complete. So it made sense to simply hold this and align it with the Auckland plan targets, and look to change it and to evolve that target once the police review is complete.
And look, I take on board Councillor Lee's comments that we are not responsible for many of these things, but I think that in our meetings with, or the meetings that presumably, or the reports that come from the police to the Community Development and Safety Committee, I think that we perhaps make a suggestion from that committee that a more ambitious target would be more in line with making this the world's most livable city. So I would look forward to that committee making some comments on that. Councillor Casey's committee, I understand, and I would certainly expect something a little bit more ambitious than a 5% decrease per decade. We want the city centre to be a safe and inviting place for people to come to.
Okay. No, good points, Councillor Quack. So that's why I think that second recommendation is a very useful one. Councillor Darby?
Oh, yeah, thanks, Chair. Look, just trying to see a way through this so that hopefully we can all buy into it. Look, I know that it did go through the City Centre Advisory Board in, I think it was December or late November?
That's right. It went through in various stages throughout last year and was agreed in December. And
it comes to us recommended for our adoption by the Chair, the Independent Chair, Kate Healy. And I know that I'm pretty sure that the Waitemata Local Board supported it, and I'm cognizant of the concerns of the Ward Councillor Lee, particularly on the Tiaranga principles. And bow genuflect to IMSB for changing the words from meet to reflect, and I'm just wondering if we can possibly consider members, and hopefully Councillor Lee will support this. Reflect is quite a prescriptive, explicit requirement. Might be a bit too strong for Councillor Lee, but I'm just wondering if to change that to have due regard to the Tiaranga principles is acceptable. Now, I've sort of canvassed this with the IMSB members, and I give them the opportunity to give me some feedback, give us some feedback on changing the word reflect to have due regard to, and likewise Councillor Lee. I'm trying to find a word that's not as You got to do it, guys. But you heed those Te Aroanga principles seriously. You don't give them the quick flick. And so, look, it's in the hands of the members, Councillor Lee and members Namani and Taipari. And if it's okay with member Taipari, I'd be happy to just absorb the C, makes good sense, into the bulk of the motion and commend it with those small changes for adoption today.
Okay, we'll get the whole thing's up there. That's good. So we'll just note your recommended changes. Member Taipari, member Namani, happy with that. We'll move on to Councillor Wood.
Madam Chair, I'm just curious to know where the City Centre implementation group figures in this, because we used to have Rick Walden come to this committee on a regular basis. They were here about every month at one stage, and we haven't seen Rick for a while. I don't know what he's doing now.
So Rick is heading the Digital Auckland program and is part-time.
What's that?
He's not been in CCIG for a while. Andrew, his last name's just Guthrie has been in that role, and Andrew is just moving back into the Auckland transport world. The CCIG focus has been wrapped up as still being focused on, but as part of the new development project office and Dean's team. And Dean is going to speak because he's excited. I love that.
Look, with the changes in leadership in the old Central City Integration Group and the creation of the Development Program Office, it was decided to bring the former role of that group under the auspices of the Development Program Office. So the key people leading out on that will be led by John Dunshay, who's known to many of you. So what we can do, and I agree with where I think this request is going, we can get that new leadership team in to give you an update on how they see this important part of the overall Auckland region continuing to be managed on behalf of the council family. So certainly arrange for that and maybe do that whenever it suits this agenda.
But be assured our focus hasn't dropped.
That's correct.
Last month I had a meeting with an officer from Auckland Transport who, as a sidebar, I asked him what was happening with buses, and he said, the buses were all going to go to the Wynyard Quarter. And I just really want to know, I want to know more about that, and I don't know if Auckland Transport representatives on this committee know that, but I think it's a matter that should be coming to this committee, not to the Transport Committee, because I'm not on the Transport Committee, and I think it's a matter that should be coming to all committees, because Councillor Darby raised the issue of the ferry terminal at the bottom of Queen Street, downtown ferry terminal, and how it's inadequate. And I think, ferries are the one area that we have woefully handled as a council when you look at their potential. So I think that I would like to see certainly a report back from that City Centre Integration Group with emphasis on transport and how they're going to handle transport pre-CRL but post-CRL, which a lot of people, especially the punters out there in Struggle Street, are asking, how it's all going to work, and especially capacity. And I think we canned 25 or something EMUs when we cut back on the capital spend on the CRL, and that's the kind of issue that I want to really understand more, because somebody was talking the other day, coming in on the train, it's very busy in the mornings. So those issues we want to hear of further. And in relation to that matter of the police figures or crime figures, whatever figures they are, because it's pretty wide-ranging. Now, Mr Goff, the Member of Parliament from Mount Roskill, he questioned the Police Commissioner yesterday. It was in the Herald this morning on the crime issues, and he's on the money, Mr Goff, when he says that the police probably are short of personnel on the ground. Now, the Commissioner met Councillor Penrose and myself before Christmas, and he certainly didn't want to talk about whether he had enough staff. He said he had adequate resources. But I think, you know, since they closed the downtown police station in Fort Street,